Hey, thanks for coming back and checking out Pete's Snake Bite Kit again. If this is your first time, what we're talking about here is building cars, specifically Pete's Cobra. But I'm going over a lot of details in this, the good, bad, and the ugly, I like to say, of what it's like to really dive in and build something from the ground up. And so this applies to just about anything you're building. Stick around, let's take a look. Okay, so where are we at on this thing now? Good question. I'm gonna go over some of that. I'll show you some shots of the car. And then on this video, we're gonna talk about the devil being in the details. It really is. There are so many details on something like this that it can be overwhelming. What I'm trying to do is take them one at a time. Some days I'm taking it 5 at a time. That's when I start to lose it. So let's talk about some of this. So first we'll talk about some things that were backordered. Some of this you guys have seen before, and maybe recap, but I just wanna paint a picture of a few of the frustrations. This is not all of them, but just some reality. So a lot of things were on back order, and this was worse because we were in, the pandemic deal. But the Wellwood brakes, like it seemed like they quit making aluminum or something. It was crazy. They were on back order for months. I want to say they got to me 4 or 5 months later than they normally would have. So no brakes, you're not putting that corner together, you're not putting the tires on, you're not putting the car on the ground. Obviously that was a stall. Before the car could be shipped, Hurricane wanted to build the headers to my chassis with a dummy engine in it. Well, you can't build headers if you don't have header flanges. So most of my car was ready at Hurricane with no flanges able to build headers and so on. Shift boot. So the shift boot is something I don't need yet, clearly, but I'm gonna need it at some point. So this car was ordered a little more than a year ago. From then to now, there's been no shift boot. I can get an ugly one. What Hurricane wants to supply is one that is, just like the original, right? So we're waiting for that too. Okay, so that was back ordered stuff. Let's just talk about other weird stuff that happened. The rear wheel stud is actually a bolt that goes through the axle flange, but it comes out, you would think it's a stud when you see it. They were too long, and the special nut that holds the knockoff adapter on, it would come through it and it wouldn't work. So I had to get a shorter one. John's Industries got me the right one, but it's figuring it out and getting it and another thing, right? The third member I got was on back order. When one became available, which had gears close to what I wanted, John's Industries sent that one to Hurricane, then they sent it to me, however that worked. Well, it ended up not having the right flange on it for the 1350 U joints I wanted to use. So when I got the drive shaft, it didn't fit in the rear pinion. John's was nice enough to get me the right one, but just one more detail we had to deal with. You might remember when I unpacked all the Wellwood stuff, I looked at the dust cover they gave me, and I looked at the adapter that goes on for the knockoff adapter, and I said, I'm not sure this is gonna fit. It didn't fit. No big problem. Wellwood sells 3 different sizes, so I got the shortest one, put it on, it still didn't fit. Now what do you do? Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. Holley Sniper is a plug and play. What that means is you plug it in, then you start playing with it. Okay, I don't want to knock Holley too much. I've been on the phone with them a lot. They've been very patient with me. We finally figured out there was an issue. They told me to send the throttle body, which has the ECU in it, send the oxygen sensor back and the little handheld screen deal, and they're going to take care of it. But guess what? There's no fuel injection on my car at this point. So I'll show you a couple shots of the little fitment plate I made to go over the parking brake handle, just a little detail I wanted to do to make it a better fit and hopefully eliminate some of the air coming up through the car. And wiring harness says, there's a wiring harness for the EFI, there's a wiring harness for the MSD, there's a wiring harness for the car, and they all have to talk to each other and be happy with each other. So there are some differing opinions between Haywire and between Holley and how they think things should be arranged and so on. And I'll show you how the wiring harness open because Holley thought I should try something else when this thing wasn't starting. We'll go into some details on that. But there's a lot of wiring stuff, and at the end, I've got to figure out who's right, what's going to make my car work, and how to put it all together and make it look nice. So here's the insulation we're putting on the inside of the car. Before I put it on the passenger floor, I wanted to finish up the plate where the parking brake comes through. You can see this aluminum plate. I built that because there's a hole in the fiberglass that didn't really match up with what I needed for the parking brake. So I fabbed up this plate and cut it to size best I could with my rudimentary tools. And then here's a trim piece that we have from the parking brake, and that ought to fit on there nice and neat and just give it a little cleaner finish. Also sealed that aluminum plate to the floor. So here's a shot of some of the scraps I've got from this insulation material. And on the back, this stuff's sticky, and it's just rubber, and it's, if you've ever seen some like dum-dum filler they used to use in cars in the 70s and 80s, it's kind of like that, just nice thin layer. And then the top, of course, is aluminum. So the idea is this stuff, the gooey stuff, will deaden vibration, will dampen heat from coming through. Of course, the aluminum is a very good heat dissipator, so this should deaden heat, should deaden noise and vibration. So this stuff sticks in really well. Like you can see a corner here. Look, I've still got to trim the fiberglass here, so it's going to come to there. But you know, it's not going anywhere. And you know, they give you, or I bought this tool, you know, which rolls it out, and that helps it stick really well. The other thing is I bought a nice pair of shears that work very well. However, the black gooey stuff gets on the blade here and gets on the blade here, cuts like butter for a little while. When the black gooey stuff gets in there, it really doesn't work well at all. I clean the blades up with WD-40, and it seems to take that out pretty quickly, and then you're back in business. I talked about the rear wheel studs being too long, and I wanted to give you a visual on that. This is actually the front wheel, but picture if this stud was longer, it would stick further through this thing as it screws on. Watch the relationship between the tool and the nut. As it goes in, you can see the tool is coming out of it. And what happened on the rears, they came out so far that when I went to tighten them down, the thing was just barely in there. I didn't realize that I actually split one of those open on the rear. That's why I had to get the shorter studs. So I talked about the dust caps that weren't working. So the ones I initially got from Wellwood, this was taller. It was about that tall. When I put this in there, and I put this on there, it wouldn't work. So I got the shorter one, it still didn't work. I sent both of them back to Alex, and I said, you can keep the other one, but could you fix this one? Because one of the guys at his shop has a lathe, and they machined this down here. So let's see if this actually works. Hey, there we go. One of the details now figured out. It's a good day. Okay, so the engine's not in and ready to go, and brakes bled and clutch and all that ready to drive, but I did want to get the engine to start. Hear it go boom, make a noise, hear it idle. Then I was going to go on to something else. It would not start. It would run. It would kind of almost idle. What was really puzzling to me is I heard what I was sure was a lean backfire at one point. Then I heard the engine blubbering because it sounded too rich. Those are kind of opposites, but this will make sense in a minute. But this got me questioning myself, and I checked firing order and top dead center and static timing at least 100 times, and went all over the place on this stuff. Talking with Holly, we kind of got this figured out, I hope, and I'll take you through some of the steps on that. Here's the wire harness. I've got much of this finished up. I actually had it all together. We come here and look across this harness. We see an explosion. What the heck happened there? So the reason this part of the wire harness is opened up is Holly was convinced that since I have the key-on power from the MSD and the key-on power from the sniper going to the same key-on power source, that there was a frequency or an interference or a noise issue between the two electronically. And that was for the key-on. The actual bigger cables that they have going to the MSD and the sniper, I ran directly to the battery, as I've showed you guys before. The ones in question were just for the signal or the key on. So as you can see, I played diagnostic merry-go-round with this thing for a while. I was convinced I had the wiring right. You can see I've still got it up there on the board, but you know, talking to Haywire, talking to Holly, and figuring this stuff out, I was sure that it was right. Holly was convinced of something else. I tried that did not fix it. And talking with the guy at Holly, he says, hey, take the air cleaner off, look down the throttle bores when it's running and tell me what you see. I had 2 wet holes and 2 dry holes in the 4-barrel throttle body. So 2 of the injectors were not working. So Pete, hearing what he thought was a lean misfire and a rich blubber, I was right. You know, and also listening to one half of the car, because I'm standing on the driver's side, so you're only hearing one side on the side pipes. It was all a little bit overwhelming, but it's back at Holly now. They say they're going to warranty and fix it. When I get that back on, we're going to put some more smoke in the pipes, and hopefully this thing is going to be running a little better. So there you have it. Today's installment of Pete's Snakebite Kit is about the details, and the devil is in the details, guys. You got to stick with it. You got to work through these things, and you'll figure it out. So if you're working on one of these projects, hope you don't run into as much fun stuff as I have, but stick with it, and you can get through it. Hope you're enjoying these videos. There's more to come. We'll see you on the next one.